So, due to the recent passing of Eddie Van Halen, one of my ultimate heroes, I wanted to make this video of just trying to recreate his famous brown sound from the early Van Halen records, using only Logic's stock plugins. So we're just going to try something fun here. Basically, we're going for a bass sound that is going to be the basis of our entire operation here. We're going to move some stuff around. We're going to add a little bit of things here and there to recreate specific songs, but the bass sound is going to be the same. So I have here a couple of tracks, each of them very similar, using pretty much the same settings on some of these things. I've recorded specific songs, so each track is a different song, and we're gonna set specific values or specific things to each of these to try to nail the sound and essence of each song. Starting right here with our first track, we're gonna start with a noise gate because Logic's amp modeling isn't exactly the best in the business. So we're going to try to tame it down a little bit by going into a noise gate. These are the settings I've come up with. You can of course tweak it to perfection and to whatever works for you. So these settings are not set in stone. You can change them around a little bit. Now the next thing is going to be a tape delay. Back in the day, you didn't have effects loops, so you had to run effects in front of the amp. And actually, for a song like Ain't Talkin Bout Love, it's actually really important because the delay is part of the riff, part of the song. There's this little skip, just a little bounce that happens, and it's actually part of the riff. And that's the delay bouncing back and compressing into a dirty amp. So yeah, you definitely want something around the ballpark of 200 to 300 milliseconds. We're going to take the dry input to about 70%. We don't want 100, we don't want less than this. And the wet, this is very important because again, if you've ever run a delay into a dirty amp, you know it can be chaotic if it's not tamed enough. So we want just a little mix, just a 1% mix. And a feedback, we want 2% just for a single repeat. That's going to be the important part here. We're just looking for a single repeat delay. And whatever, you can play around with these settings with the low and high cuts, LFO rates, intensity. If you want to mess around with those, sure, absolutely. But definitely the delay time, the dry and wet mix, and the feedback are going to be the most important controls. You want to tame down, again, to aim for a single repeat for a really low mix, and around this ballpark of the delay time. And that's going to be pretty much the same on every single track. Now the amp. Logic has this amp called the Brown Head, which is, well, pretty much where we want to be. So this is going to be important. Out of the higher gain models that Logic offers, this is probably one of the better ones. So again, recreating the classic Van Halen sound, we just want everything on 10. 10, 10, 10, 10, everything 10. Just the reverb, I have it off at the moment. We're going to use another reverb that's going to be very important. I'm going to explain it later. The effects, again, just off. We don't care about these. Then the presence, you want it to sit somewhere between 7 and 9 on the value. Because after you go past 9 into 10, the character is going to become very plasticky, and it's going to just alter the overall tone, and we don't want that. Master, again, like around 5, just a little pushed outwards. The cabinet model I'm using is the Modern British 4x12. That seems to be working with this sound. Now the microphone, I chose a dynamic 421. I tried every single model here, and this is what got me closest to the result we're gonna try to achieve. And again, the mic position, just close, but not to the closest settings. Maybe somewhere between the center of the speaker and going into the cone. That just seems to work for this. And again, this amp model repeats itself on every single track we're going to have here. Now I've added a channel EQ after the amp, just so we can tweak the sound to perfection and to our taste to make it work for what we need. So this is what's going on here. I've cut pretty much everything below 250 Hertz. I've boosted somewhere around 600 to 630 hertz, somewhere around this ballpark of the 3350 hertz, and then cut out everything after 8K more or less, just a little bit. So we're already getting a pretty good top end from the amp model itself. We don't want to kill that, but we want to tame it down a bit so it's not too ear piercing. So that's going to be the bass sound for all of our tracks. Now, for specifically, say, on a song like Eruption, the phaser is going to be really important. So we have added a phaser to this track. Now, the important part to remember here is that we're trying to emulate a Phase 90, an original 70s Phase 90, which is a 4-stage phaser. So this definitely you want here to be 4 stages. Now, here we have a little bit of the low cut and the high cut. I've chosen around this ballpark because otherwise it goes just way too toppy and just loses the character of the original Phase 90. We don't want it to be too hi-fi. We want to tame down this high end. Then I've just played around with these settings a little bit. You can tweak these to taste. And again, like the feedback, I've also chosen these settings, just playing around with them and feeling them. But again, the most important control is going to be this. The 4-stage phasing and this high and low cuts. And again, this phaser is sitting after the noise gate that we want to tame, but before the amp. We're hitting the amp. Now, in here I've moved the tape delay after the amp. We get a cleaner sound and a bit more modern type sound, where you would typically run delay and reverb after an amp. Say, for example, for You Really Got Me, what I did was run the delay after the amp, just to get, again, a cleaner signal out of it. Because, I mean, probably Eddie was using the preamp that was built into the Echoplex in front of the amp, but you don't get the echoes from that. So we're going to tame it down. So that's pretty much it for the main tracks. Now, as you can see, I've routed a buzz output at full volume on every track to go into this auxiliary track where I have a chroma reverb loaded in. What I love about this reverb is that you can get a lot of space with it, and you can also tweak the EQ to the curve you want. So you can tame the frequencies within the reverb. So I've selected the concert hall mode, and here you get quite a bit of modes. Concert hall seems to work great. And again, something very important that was part of the sound, of the Van Halen sound, was this. You definitely want to pan that reverb mostly to the right. I mean, it was probably done hard right, full 100% right, but in here I want to keep some of the original tone in here. And again, every single track, the dry tracks, are going to be panned slightly to the left. So you get the dry guitar signal going on the left, and then just the reverb going on the right. So yeah, that's the important factor to keep in mind here. And finally, for the stereo out, just the main output bus, I've added a compressor, just thinking of the way that it was done back then. You would probably typically go into a console that had built-in compression, built-in EQ. Definitely EQ, I don't want to tame with that. I like the sound we've gotten out of this. But I definitely wanted to load in just a compressor, just a general compression to glue it all together. Have that a little extra punch, bite, and warmth out of it. Just, again, trying to emulate what you would get out of a console. So, again, these are my settings. Nothing is set in stone, but I try to aim for a sort of 1.5 to 3 dB reduction, more or less. Somewhere around that ballpark should do the trick just fine. And then it's just playing with the attack, release. I definitely want a fast compression that is tight. I definitely want a relatively slow release, not too quickly. Again, just to try to emulate that essence of vintage compressors, vintage EQs, how they worked. And then after that is just regulating the output gain to match the input gain and more or less have the same output and input. So we keep the volume, but it definitely gives it a lot more character. That's basically what I've done here. Just as a quick exercise. Just a little tribute that I wanted to pay to the great Eddie Van Halen. May he rest in peace. And hopefully this can help you get amazing tones out of your Logic's stock plugins and try to make the best of whatever tools you have available. So again, well, hope you enjoyed the video. Enjoy.